Let's talk about the Singapore Grand Prix. So, if I had to describe it in one word, I'd say it was underwhelming at best. The only real piece of action was at the start where Lando crashed into Piastri, promoting himself to third and demoting Piastri to fourth. Other than that, the race was pretty boring. The two main other surprises of the race were the fact that we all expected Max to take the lead in the first corner of the first lap with the extra grip of the softs, but for some reason the softs did not light up as we expected, hence he wasn't able to take the lead or build the massive gap we were all expecting him to build. The other surprise was the genuine pace of the George Russell's Mercedes in relation to the McLaren and the Red Bulls. We know Max was managing a problem with the downshifts in the car for the entirety of the race, which is impressive but not unexpected, because if we've come to learn anything from Max, it's that we can never count him out. Still, this takes nothing away from George Russell's victory and this race, where he led the race from start to finish, save for the mandatory pit stops. Now, let's get back to the issue between Lando and Piastri. Now, look, I'm a Piastri fan and I hope he wins the championship, but having looked at the slow motion replays, I have to say I agree with the stewards that it was a racing incident. And to echo David Coulthard and Jolyon Palmer's commentary, rubbing is racing, especially on the first lap of the race. However, I do believe McLaren is favoring Lando over Piastri for the Drivers' Championship, and there's evidence of this if we look at the season thus far in its entirety. McLaren created this problem for themselves at the Italian Grand Prix when they asked Piastri to move over for Lando Norris, because Lando Norris had a bad pit stop. It was not Piastri's fault that Lando had a bad pit stop, and bad pit stops are part of racing. I also don't buy McLaren's explanation that it was the team's fault and they had the power to change it, so therefore they did. If we're going by this logic, then why did they not switch the cars around in Silverstone, promoting Oscar Piastri when he had the time penalty imposed by the stewards for erratic braking after the safety car peeled in? Now look, you can argue that the telemetry shows his braking was erratic, but he braked in the same way in the previous safety car restarts and the stewards did nothing. They didn't even issue a warning telling the team, hey, look, we've noted this, and if Piastri does this again, we're gonna give him a penalty. There was none of that. So this is my question. If they believe that the penalty for Piastri in Silverstone was unfair, why did they not switch the cars around? And look, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and say that I agree they should not have switched the cars around in Silverstone, because it was not Lando's fault that Piastri got a time penalty by the stewards, and penalties are part of racing. But the same principle that McLaren quite rightly applied in Silverstone should have also applied in the Italian Grand Prix, and it did not. So therefore you come to the conclusion that they are favoring Lando over Piastri. What's more, I think this approach they're taking is likely to do more harm than good in the long run, and sow seeds of distrust between the individual drivers and the team, because McLaren is not always going to be in a position to right what it perceives to be a wrong done to each of its drivers. And when that happens, the driver who is left out in the cold is going to feel hard done by his team. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Singapore Grand Prix. Let me know what you guys think.